I'll start today by quickly going through how to do a line trace. So we'll just go into our first person projectile and we'll add a variable called last position. It's going to be a vector and it's going to be editable. We'll go into the construction script and we'll set it. And we'll just use the GetActorLocation function. So that'll set every time you create a first person projectile. And then we'll create a tick event. And the special function we want to use now is called draw debug line. That's fairly self-explanatory. And we'll draw it from, we'll use the GetActorLocation function again. And we'll draw it from our last position to the actor location. I'm going to change it to a nice bright green color. And I'm also going to create a variable for the duration called traceDuration. And we'll see why in a minute. Compile it to set the default duration to 10. Whoops. And then after we've drawn our line, we just set the last position again. We'll set it to the current actor location. Save, compile, and we're almost done, but it seems like it works at the moment. But there is a little problem I'll show you by opening up the first person projectile, and we'll click on projectile movement and we'll change the speed to, instead of 3,000, we'll change it to 30,000. So there's a bit more like a bullet, still not as fast as a bullet. And we'll also change our here we go, decide whether to penetrate, and we'll just make sure it never does penetrate. Okay, compile it. And you see when it bounces off something, it doesn't really line up there. So we'll just remedy that now. So you go into first person projectile, and we want to do a special line trace, whether it penetrates or not really. So we'll drag this back here, and we'll drag out the impact result, and we'll do another draw debug line. This time from the last position to the location of the hit. I'll change it to yellow just so we can see what's going on. Same duration again. That's why we created that variable, so we only have to change that once. And then we'll set the last position again. We'll set it to the location of the hit. And that should all work well now. There you go. It lines up perfectly. Now for the next part, it's going to be really useful to see the velocity in that line trace. And it's a fairly simple function to show that color. So I'm just going to create a function called GetTraceColor, I guess. And I believe that will be a pure function, which means, I don't know, I guess you can research that yourself. It means it won't change the state of the object at all. And what that means to you is you won't have to connect up this execution path when we pull it out into the event graph. But anyway, I'll just show you the end result. So it's a bit of a mess, but hopefully you can see what's going on here. I'll try and upload some screenshots to an image host and put the links in the description. But hopefully you can see it's just a bunch of branches, and you use the linear interpolate function with a linear color variable, and these are pretty common, so I don't know, just look it up. If it picks some value in between, say yellow and red, based on the alpha value you give it. Alpha is always between 0.0 and 1.0. Just remember to pop this function into your event graph, and we'll do a quick demo to make sure everything's working. Yep, there you go, it changes color based on the velocity. And you can see here that Unreal doesn't come with air resistance at all, so it just stays the same color throughout the path. So for the next step, I'm going to vary the velocity of the projectile after it penetrates an object. And to do that, we'll need the distance that the projectile goes through the object, and that's very easy to get. And we'll vary the energy in the projectile proportional to the distance it goes through the object. And if you remember, the energy in this projectile is kinetic energy is equal to a half mv squared, where m is the mass and v is the velocity. So this is all fairly simple stuff. To get started, I'm going to add a variable called mass, and of course it's a float. Compile it, and 8 grams is a good number. I'm going to use that, so 0.008 kilograms. And then I'll just show you the end result. So I made a function called GetNewSpeed, and it's a pure function which takes in the hit result structure, the exit location, and the impact velocity, and it outputs the new speed as a float. And so I'll just hook that up to the event graph now. We'll put it in between compute exit location and spawn new projectile here. Let's just move this whole thing over. And I'll make a new comment. Get new speed. And drag our function out. It's a bit annoying, we have to go all the way over here to get the hit result structure, as well as the impact velocity. Exit location's just over here. And we want to do another if, or another branch, because it's very possible that this new speed will be a negative number, which means that the projectile didn't have enough energy to penetrate the material. So there's that, that if statement's working well, and if it doesn't have enough energy, we'll just come down here and destroy the projectile actor. I'll write a comment to that effect. We'll then, to change the velocity of the newly spawned actor, we'll get the old impact velocity, and we'll get the fraction of the new velocity sorry, the fraction of the new speed on the old speed. And then once we've got that fraction, we can just multiply that vector. We can multiply each component by that float. And that one will be our new projectile velocity. We can just drag it over here where we set our spawn first person projectile velocity, and we can delete this old one over here. Okay, let's see how that works. Oh yeah, that's right. While you were gone, I changed my what did I change this thing over here? My decide whether to penetrate to 15,000. So if we change that to 15,000, you'll get the same thing I'm seeing. And you can see it works pretty well. It's changing color, you know, as it penetrates, but it's just got a little error here where the where it would usually bounce. And so what we have to do there is change our GetTraceColor function, and we'll just give it the velocity input. I'll find where do we use that here. We'll connect up the impact velocity. And over here we'll connect up the projectile movement components velocity. We'll just go into that function and make sure it uses that input. Okay, now let's see how that works. There you go, much better. So you can see it losing velocity as it goes through each of those objects. So a good test to see if this is working well is to look at the penetration between two objects where one is a bit thicker than the other. So we'll just do it about that thick. And there you go, completely different velocities.